If you had to describe Peace Corps to people, what would you say Peace Corps is?
The greatest thing I've ever done in my entire life. So my site in Benin was called Chada, Tchaada. Actually, I got it tattooed on my wrist when I came home. It was village. It was 30 minutes north of the capital, but it was accessible by the main road, which was nice. So if I ever wanted to go back and forth, I could. And when I got my site, I remember being like really disappointed because all I had was like information about the site and where it was located, and it was 30 minutes north of our training site. Honestly, like initially I was pretty bummed about that, but then when I got to my actual site, I mean, I fell in love. And like I honestly think of all the health volunteers, I probably was the happiest with my site. My official title was Rural Community Health Advisor. I assisted with pre- and postnatal consultations. I got to help deliver babies, which was really cool. Things of that nature. I painted health murals. I did a world map. I did Camp Glow for two summers. Oh, so Camp Glow, sorry. Camp Glow stands for Girls Leading Our World, and it's basically a girls' empowerment camp, you know. The year actually after I left, we tried to do one for boys called Camp Blow, and obviously, as you can imagine, the title didn't go over very well. I mean, it was also somewhat like traumatic. You know, I'm like one of the first deliveries that I helped with, the mother died on the table. You know, she was 30 years old and it was a complicated pregnancy. It was like her 8th child. Like in May, there was this horrible, like traffic accident. Like it was a huge explosion. Like it was like a scene from a Hollywood movie. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, it's horrible, the shit you see. And it's awful, but I mean, you know, you spend 2 years, you see this stuff almost like, I mean, not every day, but I mean, it's a much more common occurrence than you would like to think. So I came home in September, and I immediately like just hit the ground running, started applying for jobs, and I just kept hitting brick walls. But I happened to find this position for a pharmacist, and I was like, should I apply to this? I mean, you know, it's a response position, it's still Peace Corps, like, but whatever. So I took it, and in hindsight, it was the best decision that I could have possibly made for myself. And I got to go to South Africa, which is awesome, and I got to meet some awesome volunteers. But the timing just fit perfectly. Oh, Posh Corps. So I always say, if you go to a country that people have heard of, it's not really Peace Corps. Be like, oh, you're not really a Peace Corps volunteer. Yeah, you don't know what it's like. And you know, it's true. Life in South Africa is very different from life in West Africa. They may not have the same struggles as a volunteer, but the struggles are different and the struggles are still there. When I was in South Africa, I found like just going from rich to poor, you know, was very evident, but they didn't have to deal with the atrocious weather that we did. You know, they didn't have to deal with malaria like we did, you know, but they had HIV and TB and all these other diseases, so there were different challenges. I mean, there are definitely people that argue against Peace Corps. It's kind of like, why are we still in these countries after 50 years? If we were doing our job, you know, we shouldn't be there. You know, Peace Corps is kind of all about sustainability. But on the other hand, Peace Corps is not a development organization. You know, that's why I feel like it's much more about cultural exchange. Peace Corps definitely doesn't market itself out to be that way, but I think that's the reality of the experience. I feel like it's much more about cultural exchange, and you know, like I said, I ended up gaining so much more than I ever gave to my communities. You know, I'm sure I changed a few lives here and there, but I learned so much more about myself, and you know, like I discovered like this is my passion, you know, and I feel like behind, as bliss as everyone would like to think Peace Corps is, I think everybody also has selfish reasons for doing it as well. Oh, I had a really difficult time coming back home. But for me, it was not difficult catching up with technology. It was trying to catch up with friends who had sort of moved on with their lives in the last 2 years. 2 years doesn't seem like a long time, but in America, a lot can happen in 2 years. People got engaged, people moved away, people had kids, people got married, and I kind of felt like I put my life on hold for 2 years, and that for me was really, really difficult. I mean, I would get these really generic, open-ended questions like, oh, how is Africa? Or, tell me about Africa. And it's like, alright, well, how much do you really want to know? And even still, I could chew people's ears off about Peace Corps, but it's not quite the same as talking with an RPCV about it because they've been through something very, very similar. And they can relate, just much better. It's not quite nearly as traumatic and dangerous as the military, but I feel like it's, militiamen, they have this incredible camaraderie when they get home, and it's just because of all the shit that they've done and, seen together, and I feel like that camaraderie is very, very much the same among Peace Corps volunteers, and I know that that's something that I will never, ever be able to replicate here in the US, no matter how much I try. I went 11 months without having diarrhea, which is pretty impressive. I came home with schisto. I got heat rash all the time just because it was so hot. It just looked so gross and gangrenous, and it was all pustulely. Yeah, and you always know when you had Giardia because you had those awful Giardia burps. Oh, okay, so what we called it was losing the gamble. We called it losing the gamble, and so it's basically like when you think you're gonna fart, but instead you shart. And I sprayed the hole where the roach came from, and all of a sudden, dozens of them swarmed out. I'm freaking out, oh shit, what do I do? On my arms, on my neck. It was not even exaggeration when I say I must have gotten 50 mosquito bites during the night.